My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today we're going to talk about marriage and divorce statistics in the current time. And in order to do this, we're going to have to debunk some of the propaganda and some of the lies that are in social media and a lot of these manosphere YouTube channels. Now, I do understand that everybody's entitled to an opinion, but there are many subjects in the world, this probably being one of them, that it doesn't lend itself to a lot of opinion. It lends itself to facts. And there I find it to be very disturbing that most of the information that I see that's put out there, especially the information that's the most popular, is really based upon a lot of lies and half-truths. And I don't think that that's really serving our community very well. So I think it's very important that we take a look at this. So I'm going to have a list of things to debunk, and let's start with number one. According to the information on social media and a lot of these manosphere channels, the divorce rates right now are increasing at an incredible rate. And therefore, men especially should never even think about getting married. Again, I don't have an opinion here about whether people should get married or not. That's a very personal decision. However, let's take a look at, is it true that divorce rates are increasing at an alarming rate? Well, in the year 2023, the divorce rate is 2.5 per thousand. In the year 2000, the divorce rate was 4 for every 1,000. So therefore, we're already looking at this and saying that's absolutely not true. The divorce rate is actually down. Now, the other part of the argument could be is that marriage rates are down. Marriage rates in the year 2021 were 6 for every 1,000. And about 20 years ago, they were 8.2 per 1,000. So marriage rates are definitely down, which could lead to the divorce rates also being down. But again, they're saying the divorce rates are up. So one of the things that gets confusing here is, are we talking about total marriages and total divorces? And in that categories, we can say marriages are down, divorces are down in total. However, what's also true is that the percentages of people who are getting married, the percentage of divorce in that category is actually lower. So right now, the divorce rate is lower than it's been in about 70 years. So that's the truth. What's also interesting to note here is that it's relatively true to say about 50% of marriages end in divorce. Those numbers change. The information is a little bit shaky, but it's somewhere between 42 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce. Now, you would think that after a first divorce, that people would start to work on themselves. In other words, try to make themselves to be a better partner, know where they made some mistakes, and they might be better at picking another partner. And so therefore, a second marriage should be better. However, the numbers don't say that. Second marriages, the divorce rate is 67%. In the third marriage, the divorce rate is 73%. So we can get into the reasons of why that is, but I think that's for another show. But the more marriages people participate in, the more chance you have of getting a divorce. I find that to be pretty thought-provoking. So let's continue. Number two, which you'll see on social media a lot, is that the more education a woman has and the more money that she makes, the more likely she is to get divorced. And women with an education that are relatively independent, 90% of the time they initiate divorces. So let's take a look at that. When we look at women who have an education, it is true that if they're going to initiate a divorce, it's 90% of the time it's the woman is the one doing it. That part's true. However, there's a lot of that that's not true, so let's go over that. The truth is that the more education a woman has and the more money she makes, the least likely she is to get divorced. So if you're looking to marry somebody and you're a man and you're looking to marry a woman that makes a lot of money or she has college education, she's what you would call a good bet not to get divorced. Now here's where it gets a little interesting. Now I don't know if a lot of these YouTubers are maliciously trying to skew the data or they just don't know how to read the data. I'm not sure. I think it might be a little bit of both. But again, women who have high educations, they rarely get divorced. However, if a woman with an education is going to get divorced, 90% of the time she is the one initiating. There's a big difference there to note exactly what that difference is. In continuing with that, if you have a household income of about $200,000, the divorce rate there goes down to about 30%. Now, 30% still seems pretty high, and it is high. You're looking at almost 1/3 of marriages end in divorce at that income level. However, it's still way lower than the 50% that we're usually looking at. So again, the more money you make, the better off you are of staying married. Now, we don't exactly know why, but once you hit about $600,000 as a household income, then those numbers start to track the other way to where you have a better chance of getting divorced. Again, not as much as a person who makes an average amount of money, but still more than someone who makes $200,000. In continuing with this, if you have a person or the couple, each of them are close to or they're at the poverty line, they have the highest level of divorces. So this thought that people are putting out there, that if you have a partner, especially a woman who's educated and makes money, that's going to lead to a divorce 90% of the time, that makes absolutely no sense, and there's no data whatsoever to back that up. So let's continue. Number 3 on their list, they would say that virgins are more likely to get married and less likely to divorce than women who have had multiple sexual partners. Now, right at the top, that seems like a lot of shaming. It sounds like a bunch of guys with low self-esteem that just can't imagine somebody else who had intimate relationships with somebody else. So that already should be a red flag as we think about this. Now, there's a lot of data on this. Let me just pull one, and this is from the Journal of Social Science. What they say is that the amount of partners a woman has absolutely no bearing on the divorce rate unless she has had various partners within 12 months to her marriage. Now, I think that makes sense to everybody, right? Like, if she's getting married at a particular time and within 12 months before that, she has had intimate relationships with multiple people, it would make sense that there might be a problem there. But overall, everything levels out, and it doesn't matter how many partners a woman has. It does not affect whether she's going to stay married or not. That's not something to look at. The other part that they say is that if a person's a virgin, they're more likely to get married. Again, there is no data that shows that. A woman that has had various intimate relationships, she gets married at the same rate as a virgin would. The only difference is that a person who has gone through multiple relationships, they're most likely going to get married at a later age. That's where the difference is. And again, we're in the year 2023 and we're trying to look up data about people who are virgins. I don't know how much there is on that, and these guys are harping now in the year 2023 on women being virgins. Well, good luck with that, because I don't know really any women who are. And I was a teenager in the early 90s, and there were no virgins then either. So I'm not sure where they're going with this. But anyway, what they're saying, again, is either a lie or propaganda. I'm not sure which one, and I don't know if it's a malicious intent or it's just a lack of just general knowledge. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. Continuing. Number 4. They say that women initiate 70% of divorces. And let me just say that that's true. That actually is true. However, here's where the difference lies. In a lot of social media, what you're going to see is the reason why women initiate 70% of divorces is because they are incentivized to do so, that their life is better after the divorce. Well, we could take a look at that. The data clearly states that after a divorce, there's many more women that spend a life of poverty compared to a man. So divorce seems to be much more difficult from a financial aspect on women than it is men. So that also doesn't make any sense. Now they're saying that women are incentivized to get divorced because they get to take the children, they get to have child support, they get to live wherever they want, and they get the man to pay for it, and they get half of a man's net worth. All right, so let's work through those a little bit. All right, so number one, while it's true that about 85% of women do get the children, there's a reason for that. And typically it's because what a judge will say is what they're looking for is that what's in the best interest of the child. So that's number one. And the way our society is, and it is sexist by the way, I'll say that, is that we just assume that women are better parents than men. So that's part of it. That's in our society. That's true. But what's also true is that women want their children a lot more than men do. Women will fight to have their children. And the men, although of course I'm not saying that they don't want their children, but when they don't have their children, what happens is that they're allowed to work and do their jobs or their business unencumbered by having children. In other words, they don't have to change their hours around, they don't have to worry about getting childcare, they don't have to worry about kids getting sick and so they have to miss a day of work. They can date unencumbered, they can date whoever they want, whenever they want, and not worry about having kids around and being a bad influence on them. So guys typically are not going to fight to have primary custody of the children. That's just the way it is. So again, yes, women typically get the children, but it's not because that they just assume that women steal the kids from men. It's most men are very willing to allow the woman to have the kids. So that's the first part. The second part, what they're saying here, is that women get child support. Well, that's true, but why would that incentivize anybody to get a divorce and to be able to have all the responsibilities of having the kids 24 hours a day, knowing that they're going to get child support? The average child support in the United States is about $430. That doesn't pay for anything, right? So the thought that they're living on this Shangri-La or this Nirvana because they're getting child support and that's paying for all the kids' stuff is ridiculous. $430 doesn't pay for much. And so that's ridiculous that people think that a woman would be incentivized to be in that position. And what makes that position worse is that if you look at the data, over 50% of men don't pay child support. So again, that's the pink elephant in the room, right? Like, again, if women are supposed to be incentivized to get divorced because they're going to get child support, which doesn't really pay fully for the kids anyway, and yet over 50% of men don't pay child support for whatever reason you can name it, but they don't, that's a problem. Now, here's the other part of it. Seeing your kids is different than paying child support. It's possible for a man to continue to see his kids. A woman cannot keep a man from seeing his kids, even though he refuses, for example, to pay child support. So he can literally say no to paying child support, and yet he still has every right to see his kids. Again, I'm a man. We need to look at this down the middle. This doesn't sound like a good deal. Divorce, in any sense, unless there's a lot of abuse going on, doesn't sound like a good deal for anybody. But in this position where people think that women are incentivized to be divorced, they're incentivized to take care of the kids most of the time. They're not going to have enough money to pay for the kids. And most single moms live in poverty, and they can't date as they wish. And their social life is not going to be what you would say a normal person would have in order to have a decent, let's say, life in that area. Their whole life is going to have to be based around their children. So let's look at the next part of this. They say the mother can live wherever they want and the man has to pay for it. Well, that's not true either. The non-custodial parent, which is usually the man, the non-custodial parent has to approve a move. Now, a woman could, for example, if you lived in Nevada, you could say, I have a job in Puerto Rico and I'm going to move the kids to Puerto Rico. She can do that. However, what would happen is that the father or the non-custodial parent could go and have the mother arrested for kidnapping, and then she's going to lose rights to the kids completely. Actually, she's going to go to jail. So the thought that the woman who has primary custody, for example, could just take the kids wherever she wants and just live in another area of the world so the man can't visit his kids, that's ridiculous. I don't even know where they're getting that. That doesn't make sense. And by the way, in terms of paying child support, that's also going away. Because many times now, and let's say we're talking about first marriages, somewhere between 18 to 30 years old, in that age category, women are making more money than men and they have more property. So if there's a divorce in that age group, in that demographic, the chances of the man paying are much, much less. Because what happens is that even if, let's say the child decides, they're old enough to decide, and they want to live with the father, it's going to be the mother who has to pay child support. And most likely she has a job, and so she's going to be hit for child support. That's the way it works. So it's not becoming so much a male or female now. It's becoming who has the money, who has the resources, and what's in the best interest of the child. And let's see, what else do they have in here? Okay. And they phrase it as, in a divorce, a woman gets half of the man's money. It's an interesting phrasing of it, because if you have a man and woman going into a marriage and they both start off with nothing, and so they're building up their finances, I don't know why they would phrase it as they would take half of the man's money. The money gets split evenly between two partners who are both probably working. I mean, again, this is the year 2023. There's more women in the workforce than men. So to phrase it as she takes half the man's money doesn't make any sense. It's their money, therefore they can split that. That's how it should be phrased. The other part is that I live in Nevada. It's a community property state. I think there's about 8 or 9 states in America that are community property states. Meaning that if you get married and you come into the marriage and you have a paid off house, maybe you have a paid off car, maybe you own 10 apartment complexes and you have a business, whatever it is, that's what you come into the relationship with, that's what you leave with. So whatever you come into the marriage with, that's what you have. That cannot be taken away from you. There's no way that somebody could take half of that because you were able to accrue that before the marriage. Now, what you have built up together after the marriage date, that money, that gets split in half. But you came into the marriage with what you had in the beginning. So again, stealing half of a man's money, that doesn't make any sense. That's not true. It's not true at all. And continuing with that, let's talk about the part where women initiate 70% of the divorces. That's true. There's a lot of reasons we can look into that. If you look on social media, it's because Women are fickle, they don't really want to be in relationships, and they've had a lot of relationships in their past, so supposedly they can't pair bond. I get really nervous when you get normal people that are not in psychology talking about the term pair bond and using that for a woman that's had some relationships in her life. That doesn't make sense. It sounds like, again, another low self-esteem man trying to shame a woman, so that doesn't make sense. What does make sense, if you ask women why they initiate divorces, there's a few reasons that come up. Actually, there's a lot of reasons. Let's just name a couple just to keep this short. So number one on the list would be is that they don't have to tolerate unacceptable behavior such as addiction and abuse. Back in the day when a woman had to depend on a man's money, of course, she would have to put up with a lot because she definitely would be poor if she were divorced. She was hoping and expecting the man to be able to support her financially. And she wasn't going to school and she didn't have a job to support herself. So she was in trouble that way. The other thing that happens a lot is that women are working full-time today, and let's say the man is working full-time. What happens from there is who takes care of the household chores? Well, what you'll see a lot is that although women are taking on supposedly quote unquote the masculine role of working full-time, they also come home and now they're expected to work full-time doing the chores and doing everything around the house without having much help. Now, this is the reason for what that's called gray divorces, where if you're at the older end of Generation X, there's a lot of women who want divorces. Or if you're in the boomer generation, a lot of women, again, calling it gray divorce because they're older, they want out of that relationship because the kids are gone, and now they don't have to wait hand and foot on a guy, including working, and then they have to come home and do another full-time job. So who has it really well these days? Who's doing a good job? It's the young people, because they're throwing out the typical gender roles. So yes, women are working, and yes, men are doing a lot of the chores around the house. That's why when you look at the divorce rates, going back to the beginning, divorce is lower now overall because young people are actually figuring it out. They're actually having an equitable distribution of their work. And so therefore, the relationship is a lot better. It wasn't like it used to be, where the man would basically be the leader of the household and the woman would have to do everything, which is, you can see it being an even split back in the day, right? If the man was doing the financial resources part, the woman was doing the household work, that's great. But what happens when the woman is working just as much as the man? And then after that, then the man doesn't do any chores around the house and the woman's still left to do it now 2 full-time jobs. So again, a lot of women don't feel supported that way. The other way women don't feel supported is a lot of men, they tend to have a lot of low self-esteem. And when a woman does well in the workplace, they tend not to support a woman who's doing well. They tend to get very jealous and envious and annoyed by that. And they don't support her work as much as a woman typically supports a man doing his work. And so they feel very unsupported in that emotionally. And that's also another reason that's given of why women want to end or dissolve that relationship. Continuing with this, number 5, they say marriages are decreasing due to men not finding women to be marriage material. That's interesting because it's, again, there's a lot of men these days not working at all, and men are falling behind in every single category against women. They're not going to school as much, they're not earning as much, they're staying at home, they're not buying houses at the same rate that women are. So the amount of men who are supposed marriage material is going down, a tremendous amount. So why are they saying that women are not marriage material? Well, it could be because because they have jobs, and that makes men feel somehow nervous or scared that because a woman has options, that she can't be trusted. So again, going back to the beginning here, a lot of times in the manosphere, what they're going to talk about is hypergamy, where a man wants to marry somebody at a socioeconomic level that's at their equal or below. Really what they're trying to say here is, though, is that they want a woman who can be easily coerced or controlled or manipulated because they don't have a lot of power in that relationship. And so when that happens, that's what they're looking at. So women become less desirable as they become more powerful to a man. So who's the one who's becoming less and less desirable? Well, I can't figure it out for everybody, but let's just say that marriages are really not decreasing because women are becoming less desirable humans. They might be becoming less desirable to low self-esteem, low value men. That might be possible. But what's also happening here is that there used to be a stigma to men and women living together or cohabitation. Cohabitation in the United States in the year 2023, over the last 10 years has gone up about almost 30%. And they have no desire to get married. They're just going to cohabitate. Nothing wrong with that, no judgment. However, that does knock down the amount of marriages that there's going to be. So it's not a problem between men and women. It's just a way of looking at life, and we have a different culture that says that living together is not a bad thing, and you don't have to get the state involved in your relationship to make it a true relationship. The other reason why marriages are decreasing right now is because of young people being more intelligent. What they're doing is that they're waiting until they're financially and emotionally and socially secure in order to have a relationship and to start a family. Now, these numbers are just, they're mind-boggling in a way, because during COVID, the average age for a man to get married was 35. That's middle age. And for a woman, it was 33. Now, to be fair, COVID's over now, and so the numbers have switched. So in the year 2023, the average man who's getting married is 32, so it's gone down 3 years. And the average woman, it's 30 years. But either way, that's pretty old when you think about it. For example, when my parents got married, my father was 21 years old, and my mother was 18. That was not unheard of. That was pretty normal for back then, give or take a year. That's it. I mean, that was very normal. So we're looking at a change in a whole generation that they're waiting in order to get married. And that's actually a good thing, because they're much more inclined to stay together, and they're mature, and they're much more inclined to be better parents. So this whole thing about marriages are decreasing because of women are somehow deficient is not true. Marriages are decreasing because men and women are both becoming actually more intelligent about how difficult marriage is and how important of a decision it is. So although a lot of people my age, we do make fun of Generation Z or the millennials, you got to hand it to them here. They're 100% correct in this area, and they are rewriting the way marriage should be done, and they're doing an incredibly good job at it. Continuing, other reasons why the manosphere and people on social media who seem to take up most of the influence, the professionals don't have much influence compared to some of these people on TikTok. But what they're saying is you should never get married, especially if you're a man, because 15% of marriages are sexless. All right, but what they don't tell you is that 55% of those sexless marriages are sexless due to medical issues. Therefore, both partners could still love each other, care for each other, want to be in each other's company, have had good long lives together, but unfortunately sometimes, or all the time, at some level, the medical issues are going to rain down on all of us, and that's the way it is. So it's not correct to say that you shouldn't be married because 15% are sexless when most of them are really due to medical issues. What's also true is that married men still have more sex than single men. So again, why that they would use that as a tool to say that men should get married is totally false and should not be used. Some other interesting facts: men are almost twice as likely to remarry after having a divorce, and again, women typically don't want to be remarried. Men want to be remarried at twice the rate of women do. So I think that tells you if men value marriage or if they get something out of marriage. So again, the thought out there that why would a man be married? Why would he want to do that? He doesn't get anything out of it. Most men would actually disagree with that. Divorced men are 2 times more likely to commit suicide than a married man. That's important to know. And this is even more interesting. 50 to 65% of women report being happier after they get a divorce. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this probably. Women are more social, they have more friends, society tends to be a little bit lenient on them. Men are always told to keep their feelings inside. There's a lot of that. But again, it's very interesting to note that during a divorce, about half of those women tend to be happier, whereas men are 2 times more likely to commit suicide. So that again, that will illustrate the point that men who typically, at least they say it out loud, that they do not want to be married, and people around them try to tell men, oh no, you don't want to be married, you don't want to be with one woman the rest of your life, that's a terrible thing. They kind of get pushed into it in a way, but when they do get married, they want to stay married, and if they get divorced, they want to get remarried, which is totally different than women who are usually being pushed into marriages and long-term relationships, but once they're in it, they're the ones who are trying to initiate the divorce, and once they are divorced, they tend to be pretty happy about it. So I think that's all I have to say today about some marriage and divorce stats. And I still think it's unfortunate that the main influencers right now in the world tend to be very angry, misogynistic men that are doing these manosphere channels and really pushing it on social media. So be very careful of who you listen to. Don't just listen to me either. You want to listen to a very wide variety of people and to start formulating your own opinion on who is actually showing you the facts and who's not. Hopefully this was beneficial to you in some way. My name is Joe Peroni. This is the Rise Above Project. Thank you.